Hello, everybody. I'm Mike Berberich. I am the director of A&A Marketing Futures, and if you're asking yourself, what? I'll get to that in 1 second. But first, I want to thank each and every one of you for being here with us for the final presentation of the Brand Activation Conference. I had a really inspiring couple of days listening to all of our members come up and share their stories, and so we're gonna finish this off right. So last summer, A&A launched an initiative called Marketing Futures, and we did this based on two truths. The first was that no matter your vertical or your department or your title, innovation or transformation or disruption, whatever your organization calls it, affects each and every one of us every single day. And the second truth is that none of us are going to figure all of this out on our own. So Marketing Futures was created to be a crossroads between brands, agencies, entrepreneurs, innovators, and academia to come together to discuss and debate the future of marketing. So we began as an interactive content experience. If you go to ana.net/marketingfutures, you can find 12 deep dives into emerging trends like blockchain, chatbots, and artificial intelligence. In 2019, we expanded our offerings to include a bi-weekly podcast where we cover topics ranging from esports, the emerging market of legal cannabis, and the state and future of programmatic. We also have a monthly Pulse issue where we give you the latest and greatest on an emerging trend. And we are now really proud and excited to present the next stage of Marketing Futures, the Futures Forward Studio, where we're taking that mission and putting it on its feet. So these sessions will bring the innovators, the people who are building that next game-changing tech, to share their brand case studies with all of us, and then answer the questions that we might all have right now, considering whether or not we need to up our game in the AI world. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic on to Greg Paull.
All right.
Greg, thanks so much.
Look, in the words of Gary Vaynerchuk, I mean, this is a big effing deal. It sounds kind of small with Mike saying it. But you know, this is kind of the future of what we'll all be doing going forward, going beyond the traditional companies and partners that we've worked with and really trying to find new spaces. So we as a consultant have been very fortunate to work with Mike and his team the last 12 months, but what they're doing is quite frankly amazing. So you know, we fully support it. But we would say, look, beware of shiny new objects. Not every tech is going to work for you at every stage of your marketing process. If you think you can use VR when you're developing the insights for your marketing campaigns, that might work if you're grassroots, but probably not if you're a more typical marketer. So I think it's finding the right way to bring tech on board at the right time. And today we're going to talk about AI because to us it seems throughout the whole marketing process there's going to be a role for AI to play to make things better. Yesterday I learned a new word, activatizing. Tremendous word. So rather than just advertise what we're doing, we need you to act. We have put on every seat two things. One is about helping you understand whether you're ready for MarTech, and the other is more of an AI integration checklist. And I think, you know, both of those things you'll probably leave behind because you're like, I don't want to take paper, I've got to go back on this flight. But you know, in 6 months' time, you'll be like, where is that paper? What happened? I really wish I had that. Or 1 year's time, and even at the bottom, you'll see a URL, and you can download the PDFs from there as well in case you just want to rip off the corner and go from there. You can do that as well. So Mao Zedong once said, you know, let 100 flowers bloom. There are now hundreds of options in this space. You need to be careful and select wisely. You know, I think as you've seen the Lumascapes that have come up over the years for ad tech, you're going to start to see those for Marketing Futures. And actually AI itself is kind of differentiated already, whether it's a media function, an analytics function, you know, customer experience function, et cetera. So, you know, we're here to really try and bring you some of the best companies. We've got two fantastic companies today. One of them is called Realeyes. Tina is going to talk a little bit about that. And we're very lucky to have Alice from Hotels.com, which is a real client case that we're going to go through in a minute. And then Greg from Automat is going to show you something really cool on conversational AI as well. Neither of these guys have paid to be here to the ANA. They also haven't paid me, but they can later if they want to. It's up to them. But in the meantime, I'm going to hand over to Tina and get her to kick things off.
Thank you. So how many in the room have heard of Emotion AI? Anybody? Show of hands, a couple people. Are any of you using Emotion AI in any of your practices in your organizations? Anybody? No? Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about this emerging technology. And we're going to talk about the technology in the context of advertising and in brand content. And we'll talk about how brands and advertisers and publishers and marketers and media companies are using this technology to make business decisions every day. So as Greg indicated, my name is Tina Gaffney. I run the customer success function at Realeyes. And what that means is that it's my group's responsibility to make sure that our clients get everything that they need and want out of our service. One such client is Alice. And Alice, we've been working with Hotels.com for about a year now. And Alice is going to take us through a project that we recently ran together in a couple of minutes. But before we do that, I wanted to kind of set the stage and talk about the world that we live in. I know that this first headline, "This is the age of distraction," will come as absolutely no surprise to any of you in this room, right? We all know we're living in the age of distraction. I think some of the stats that we've posted up here might come as a surprise at the severity of the level of distraction that we're all living in. At the same time, volume of video continues to rise. Those of you that have computers in front of you, you might have your watches, you have your phones, you might have your iPads out. You're getting tons and tons and tons of content, even during this presentation, that is competing for your attention. So the volume of video continues to rise. And I heard other people in the last couple of days in presentations talk about those same two bullet points. Specifically the LL Bean presentation with Ben and Catherine. They talked about that as a challenge in the marketplace. But what I didn't hear people talking about over the last 2 days is something that's really important, and that is that brands are losing connection with their audiences. These numbers were staggering. This was from a study that Havas did about a year ago. 77% of people said that brands could disappear and the consumers wouldn't even care. And the other stat that I found staggering is that 58% believe that content being created by brands is poor. So they're not engaged in that content. So what does that mean for us as marketers? That means for us that we need to figure out new ways to understand how to create effective content. So I'm going to give you a quick demo of the technology. It's about 30 seconds long. I'll let you take a look and then we'll talk about it. Okay, so that's a very simplified version of how the technology works. For our purposes today, we'll talk about the technology in two buckets. One of them is attention, right? So attention is the gatekeeper of all advertising. If you're not getting people's attention and keeping people's attention, it doesn't really matter how good the creative is, right? Because people aren't going to be watching it. And then, so first marker is attention and understanding whether you're getting it and keeping it. We're able to do that through this technology. The second thing is emotion, right? Understanding how people are emotionally engaging with that content. Are they happy when they're supposed to be happy? Are they showing surprise at those moments where you're being awe-inspiring in your advertising content? Are they sad when they're supposed to be sad? Are those emotional reactions resonating with the audience? So the two key points that I want to make before we have Alice come up and talk with us about the project that we did together is that this technology, emotion AI technology, is changing how companies understand content. The way this was done in the past was all through survey, right? You would show somebody advertising content and ask them a bunch of questions. We don't have to do that any longer. And secondly, what this technology is doing is establishing new currencies for measurement. I heard a lot about impressions over the last couple of days, and impressions are a great rule of measurement, but we're now starting to see from the publishers we're partnering with and the media companies that we're partnering with that this attention metric and understanding attention volume and frequency is an even more powerful measurement tool. Okay, so with that, we'll turn it over to Alice to get us started on the project we worked on together.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Alice Chen, and I am here with Hotels.com. And I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you about our latest brand campaign that we launched a little less than a month ago, so hot off the presses. I'm going to start off by asking a couple of important questions. One, how many of you have seen a photo that someone has posted on either your Instagram or Facebook newsfeed of them on some exotic, fun-looking vacation? Raise of hands. Yes, almost everybody, right? Okay, now, how many of you have been envious of that trip? Maybe even rolled your eyes at that trip, but liked it anyway?
Yes.
Yep, still almost everybody, myself included. Well, our research shows that you are not alone. We surveyed Americans and found that 42% of people said that they are envious of these trips but like it anyway, multiple times throughout the day. And they actually say that the most annoying caption that people write, one of the most annoying caption is, "Life's a beach." So just keep that in mind as you guys are writing your captions. Another thing that we found that I found to be really interesting is 40% of Americans we surveyed said that they're willing to pay a photographer to follow them around on their vacation to capture that perfect vacation photo. So the envy is real. So our Hotels.com solution to that consumer tension is, instead of you guys sitting and hate liking these photos on Instagram, Hotels.com is going to help you get to experience that vacation yourselves. So here is one of the ads in our campaign.
See? Romance isn't dead.
But it is here.
Thanks, Captain Obvious.
Don't hate like their trip. Book yours with Hotels.com and get rewarded basically everywhere.
Why are you here?
Why are you here?
Why are either of you here?
Hotels.com. Be there, do that, get rewarded.
All right. So that was the final spot that we launched on air, in addition to a number of different spots as part of the campaign. But before we launched it on air, we tested 12 different rough cuts in the US, partnering with Realeyes. And as you can see from here, we tested multiple versions of each ad in order to determine which versions resonated the best with our consumers. Our goal is to build an emotional connection with our consumers, but how do you really measure that? And that's really where Realeyes steps into this picture. Across the top, you'll see attraction, retention, engagement, and impact, and those are a couple of the buckets that Tina mentioned earlier, the different elements that come together to really drive an effective ad that people will remember. So you can see all of the ads that we tested did really well with that last bucket in terms of impact. However, there are a couple of different ads where it was not very strong in terms of capturing that initial attraction from our consumers. So things that we can improve in terms of going into those finished spots. And so romance is the one that you guys just saw. That was our best performing video based on the Realeyes ad testing. And what we found was that there were spikes of happy emotion, so that yellow line is happiness emotion, the red is negative, and you see that it really spikes early on within the first 4 seconds, which is exactly what we want to see. And then that strong momentum continues to build and peak when the husband flushes the toilet. And then that happiness level is nicely sustained throughout the end of the ad. The red and yellow dotted lines show the norms of other ads that have been tested of a similar duration in the US as well, because we know we're constantly competing for attention, not just amongst travel ads, but across all ads in the marketplace. And not even just ads, just anything that anyone is looking at any time. So, quick case study, but thank you very much. I'll pass it over to Greg.
Great, thank you. So I've really enjoyed all of the presentations over the last 2 days, and one of the things that I've been really struck by is this idea of so much of what I've heard has been about how you can do one-to-many types of communication with consumers. And where we're really focused as a company with respect to conversational AI is how to have personalized one-to-one communications. So as we're thinking about this and as we go through some of these case studies, that's kind of the frame that I would put on this, is thinking about as you're working on different brand activation strategies and different things at your companies, how you can leverage the really great work that you're doing from a one-to-many standpoint in terms of communicating with consumers, transitioning that then into meaningful one-on-one communications where you can then learn about those consumers and then use those insights that you glean from doing that to then help inform and magnify then other types of communications that you're doing at a broader scale. And one of the areas that this got touched upon yesterday was the presentation by Grassroots, right? So she was talking about, for example, that when their herbologists are meeting with these consumers, they gain these really deep, meaningful insights into consumer needs and so on. And those types of things then have helped inform their broader communication strategies. And so one place that I thought we could go a little bit deeper here is some of the work that we've done specifically with one of the L'Oreal brands within beauty. And whether it was Mountain Dew, whether it was LL Bean and others, they started from a deep insight. You know, we just heard from the Fisher Nut example as well, to start with a deep insight into a consumer need. And here the deep insight for L'Oreal and for Vichy and for us was looking at research that we had done and then also other research in the industry that would tell you that beauty consumers, and particularly women for skincare products, but men as well, are overwhelmed by choice. They don't know how to navigate product claims and just the sea of product choices that are out there. And so to the extent that you can help guide and direct and provide some expertise and insight into that, it's just a huge win for the consumer. And so what we did is that we worked with Vichy and their team to create a virtual skin expert. And what that experience did is it was on their website. It was also available through Facebook Messenger, through social media channels, and a number of other different touch points with advertising. And what the experience did is it enabled people to express what their needs were, whether it was going through a menu-based system or being able to type those needs into the system, and then be able to be guided to a particular set of product recommendations that were right for them. And then what they also did as time went on is that they integrated this into some of their sampling efforts as well. And what we saw is that consumers really readily engaged with this. On average, we saw about 8 minutes worth of engagement with each of these chats. And this was compared to about 2 minutes on average for the website. So about 4 times the level of engagement through this type of experience, through people just kind of being left to their own devices on a website. And that also led to some really deep insight into those consumer needs. So on average, we saw about 7 unique data points about each of these consumers, and they were able to write that back to their CRM system to then use that for subsequent communications with those consumers. And then this ultimately led to a 35% increase in average revenue per user through this type of an experience through their website at large. And so just a really great success there for the brand, but also really meaningful for consumers as well. And so when we explicitly asked people in the experience, did they like the experience, was it so-so or not really, 86% of people said that they did. And then when we dove a little bit deeper into why that was, you get this kind of assortment of quotes, but really it was this idea of, hey, you just took this pain away from me of helping me kind of figure out what's right for me. It was this very personalized, it was a very immediate type of an experience, and just really valuing the advice that Vichy, in this case, could bring to the table as an expert in their particular domain. And so now, based on what we've initially did with them in Canada, they're now rolling this out to a number of different markets kind of around the world. One of the other things that we've now been doing with them is then integrating this into their advertising, their digital advertising. And so in our case, we have a relationship with Google and one of their groups called AdLingo. And so we've been able to now take this experience and actually embed it within display advertising, such that rather than clicking on one of these ads and then going through a website, you can now click into the ad, have this interaction where the consumer is, and so you can now reach the consumer out on the internet at large, as opposed to purely just on the brand website. And then when they become a more knowledgeable and qualified lead, still get them over to where they ultimately want to be in terms of the brand interaction. But this is not just for beauty. So just as one other kind of quick example here for you, we've done some work with National Bank of Canada, and this is the end of one of their kind of video ads here. But in their case, they were really interested in getting people into their branch locations. As time has gone on, the number of people who go into branches has gone down dramatically, given mobile check deposit and online banking and so on. But what they find is that if they can get people into those branches, they can have these very meaningful conversations with people about their financial needs, and that really good things kind of happen. But they need to get people to the right branch, talking to someone who has the right expertise for the things that they need, and also make sure that people, quite frankly, are prepared for those appointments so that they're bringing all the right information to that session. And so here, the way that they approach this at a very practical level is that they ran Facebook advertising that was geared towards different audiences. They then drove that traffic to this, in this case, Facebook Messenger-based experience. And then behind the scenes, we were integrated with a different partner of theirs called Time Trade that then facilitated the actual scheduling of the people in all of those different branch locations. So kind of bringing all of these different pieces together to enable, in this case, what the brand wanted to do from an activation standpoint for different populations of people. And then this, what we've also seen this type of technology be utilized for is also ongoing re-engagement of consumers as well. So one thing to think about here is how to, what we would call have a connected conversation with consumers, such that as they're going through that customer journey, how can you have these meaningful touch points with them and kind of weave that together and infuse things like tutorials or where their order might be at a given point in time. And so as I was talking to people kind of over the last 2 days, one of the questions that I had for them is I said, hey, this is my first time here at an ANA event. Hopefully it won't be my last. But I'm going to be speaking tomorrow. What are you really most interested in out of these sessions? And one of the things that people said is, I want to be kind of inspired as to the kind of state of the art, or the art of the possible, if you will. And then I want to know how to then translate that into action kind of for my brand. And so one place that I thought I would just close here is to show you a brief video that we put together that kind of shows the kind of art of the possible. And these are all things that could be done today with respect to the customer journey. And so what this, to just kind of set the context here, this is a beauty example, but I think you'll see how it has applicability in other contexts as we go through it. So the person's here, they're on a website, they see one of these types of ads, they now kind of can click into it, get an initial assessment of some of their needs. For example, once they get to a certain point in that flow, we can now kind of seamlessly transition them over to a website to then continue to have an interaction with a virtual advisor or kind of a virtual assistant in this context. And as you can see here, they can do things like type free-form inputs to the system. We can readily do things like collect, for example, their email address in a one-click kind of a way, which then can be useful for other types of communication with that consumer. From there, they can go ahead and kind of buy immediately through the e-commerce site. Some amount of time can go by and now follow up with push notifications, so continue that conversation with an update as to where that order might be. From there, thinking about this in an in-store or kind of retail type context, or even an event context, where you can have in-store displays, you can have things like QR codes, or in the case of Facebook Messenger, messenger codes, which can then bring back up either that existing conversation that they've had or start a new one with a consumer, and where they can go a little bit deeper kind of into a particular product, and then in this example, ultimately buy that product. And then from there, once they get home, they could, for example, have a branded experience with a smart speaker.
Google, ask Sudden Glow how to use my Go for Glow serum.
Your Go for Glow serum should be applied twice a day, in the morning and before bed.
So whether that's through an Alexa device or a Google Home device, you can now see how that might sort of fit in. So one just kind of practical way that kind of comes to life to think about it is, creating a core set of conversational intelligence, if you will. So kind of having an understanding of the product set or of your particular domain, and then exposing that through these different touch points, and then thinking about how you then kind of stitch all of that together. So with that, thank you very much.